Уважаемые дамы и господа, дорогие друзья.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome you in St. Petersburg at the meeting of heads of state and government of the G20. This year we are celebrating the 5th anniversary of the G20 summit, and that's why we are entitled to sum up what has been achieved and what is to be done. First of all, we managed to consolidate the efforts of the global leading economies. Through joint efforts, we managed to mitigate the most acute manifestations of the crisis. We've managed to create an environment conducive to the prevention of future crises. Let me remind you that a year ago, in Las Camas, we were speaking about the establishment of a so-called anti-crisis firewall with a number of coordinated steps in its foundation. Firstly, that's an attainment of the principal goal to reduce budget deficits, levels of public debt in developed countries, including Europe. Secondly, the bridging of significant gaps in the field of financial regulation. And finally, the third thing is to address the problem of shortage of resources of the IMF. On the whole, the G20 has presented its capability to address very delicate issues. Thanks to the measures taken, the situation has drastically improved. Today, the most pressing issues have been addressed or under control. However, it's too early to indulge in complacency. We are yet to find an answer how to bring the global economy back to the track of sustainable and balanced growth. Unfortunately, we haven't achieved that goal, which means that systemic risks and conditions for acute crisis relapse persist. Recently, the IMF has revised the global economic forecasts downwards up to 3.1% for 2013, although a year ago its assessments were around 4%. The US economy is growing, which is very encouraging. However, it is not growing fast enough. For the first time over many years, we see the Japanese economic growth, unfortunately, without guarantees of the stability of this trend. The EU countries have shown only the first signs of the end of recession. In the second quarter, there was a modest growth of 0.3%, and as a whole, for the year, the results will be not that optimistic. Moreover, in recent months, new risks have emerged. At the time, monetary stimulus of quantitative easing undertaken by a number of countries helped maintain growth rates and reduce volatility of the financial markets. However, this policy of giving away free money cannot last forever, and we understand that all perfectly well. That is why our partners start tapering unconventional financial and economic policies, which could have an impact on key global markets and affect economies of other countries. We know that, and we can witness that with our own eyes. What we need is the constant monitoring and forecasting of possible consequences, prompt adoption of additional preventive measures at national and global levels. Let me reiterate that the most important is to ensure basic conditions for the global economic recovery through qualitative development. That's why the problems of promoting economic growth and job creation have become the central theme of the Russia's presidency in G20. Today, we will adopt the St. Petersburg Action Plan for Growth and Jobs. I believe we have got all reasons to consider this document as a reasonable balance of interests. It will help strengthen the trust of financial markets towards our plans and intentions, and at the same time, it will encourage the investors to draw their attention to the real economy. The plan is based on fiscal strategies and commitments of the countries to carry out structural reforms. In the heated discussions, we've come to a common understanding to strike an ideal balance between fiscal consolidation and boosting growth. It was a very complicated work, but we would like to thank our experts for the results achieved. It's obvious that in the midterm and long terms, the majority of the developed economies will have to reduce the level of public debts and budget deficits. Nevertheless, the only recovery of the stability of public finances will not be enough to get back on the track of high growth rates. The logics and the developments under the global financial economic crisis have shown clearly that the structural reforms are needed. It's important to focus on fundamental guarantees for sustainable long-term growth and development. That's the logic behind the St. Petersburg Action Plan. It refers to the undertaking of overdue steps on labor market regulation and taxation, on the development of human resources, modernizing infrastructure and regulating trade, goods markets and commodity markets. Unfortunately, yet the breakthrough results are yet to be achieved because the process of structural reforms is very complex and it is to be developed in the longer term. General stabilization of the situation, risks mitigation related to financial markets and several debts will be helped by increase of the resource of the IMF by more than $460 billion. And G20 states have played a key role in this undertaking. Today, we can see that we have fully honored the commitments taken by us in Los Cabos a year ago. The next step will be the reform designed to increasing the weight, quotas and votes of the developing states and emerging economies in the IMF. Unfortunately, we have to state the lack of progress in implementing our decision to complete the 15th quarter review process by January 2014, although this work is in the focus of the attention of the global community. We're held back by the lack of decision on the ratification of arrangements made in 2010. I call on everybody to be prepared to come to balanced compromise in the area of quota redistribution, since it will predetermine the efficiency and legitimacy of the IMF and G20. Tangible results have been achieved in the field of financial regulatory reform. This issue has been on the top of our agenda from the very beginning of the global crisis. Let me stress that in 2013, the Financial Stability Board has turned into a full-fledged international organization, which will strengthen its potential in improving financial regulation. Great results have been achieved in the development of our approaches to reforming and partial implementation of the globally agreed reforms in the following areas, which are very important, and I'll take a liberty to name them all. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the first one is Basel III, including the regulatory framework for banks. Secondly, reforms of the over-the-counter derivatives market. Thirdly, measures with respect to systemically important financial institutions. To carry out such complex reforms, we need to strike compromise between the leading global economies. It's obvious that national measures on strengthening financial stability should not result in high regulatory costs, unjustifiably high, particularly for foreign participants of financial markets. The quality of financial regulation hinges directly upon the efficiency of measures to combat tax evasion. That topic has become one of the priorities this year. Against the backdrop of the greater globalization of the global economy, to efficiently combat improper behavior of taxpayers, the efforts of separate countries are not enough. Every country should strive to create the best possible tax regime for the business community, but it does not mean that these measures should be used to avoid taxation. As a result of our meeting, we will plan the joint action plan on combating tax base erosion and profit shifting. It has been prepared together with the OECD. And I would like to thank our colleagues for this work. Without them, we couldn't have achieved such results. The plan implies the adoption of a number of steps for greater transparency and improving international agreements in the area of taxation. As an outcome, there will be reduced practice of profit shifting to the offshores and growth of taxes payment in the jurisdictions where these trades and services are produced. Ladies and gentlemen, let's discuss our agenda and discuss trends in the global economy and ways to respond to them. Let's discuss the problems of financial regulation, including the action plan in the area of taxation and reforms of the global financial architecture. Let's agree on the St. Petersburg action plan prepared by the experts. Thank you for your attention. In the beginning of this part of our joint work, I would like to give the floor to Madame Lagarde, which will assess the current state of affairs in the global economy and finances. And I would kindly ask you to push the button on the console equipment so that I could understand who is willing to take a floor and to share their point of view on the current problems. We will work here for around 2 hours. And if everybody who is willing to take the floor fails to do so, in order to not to stay here for a long time and to be on time with our working dinner, and I would propose to conclude the discussion of this session there, and then we could proceed with the discussion of other issues of mutual interest. As a president of today's meeting, I wouldn't propose to extend the current agenda, but some of the participants asked me to allot some time for the discussion of other issues which were not part of our agenda, but which are extremely important in the field of global policy. I'm referring to the situation around Syria. Let's do that during our working dinner so that we do not discuss all the issues at once. So in the first part of our today's summit, let's discuss the problems we have gathered here for and which are about the key issues of the G20.